as I said at the top of the show, there's a lot of new faces in the North Carolina General Assembly this year as a new session convenes, and we are fortunate to have 4 of them join us today, and we're going to introduce you to the first 2. First, we have Representative Julie von Haefen. Julie represents Wake County, I think parts of Cary and Apex, and we can talk about that. Rachel Hunt is next to her. Representative Hunt is in District 103, Mecklenburg County. Among many communities there, you represent Matthews and Mint Hill. Well, first of all, congratulations on joining the General Assembly. Now, look, you two ladies defeated 2 of the most powerful Republican men in the General Assembly, Representative Nelson Dollar and Representative Bill Brawley. I guess before we get into some of the education things, I mean, did you feel like this was were you part of a sort of a national thing that was going on as far as women getting involved in running? I'll ask you first, Julie.
Yes, I think so. I mean, I think that, of course, more women ran this year than probably ever before. We're really excited to have so many women elected this year. And I think especially, I know Rach and I met during the campaign, and we met a lot of the other women that were running for House and Senate. We became a very close group that really relied on each other during the campaign, and it was really great.
Right. What about you, Sam?
Absolutely. We had a huge wave of women that were so upset with the way things have been going in our state and in our country that we just decided to take the ultimate sacrifice and run ourselves. We've all worked on campaigns for most of our lives, I certainly have, and donated, and this was just the step further. And we, like Julie said, had a really strong group of women, some of whom won and some of whom lost, but we remain close to this day. Right.
All right, well, you mentioned, Representative Hunt, you mentioned you've been involved in working around campaigns. I think that's pretty obvious. For our viewers that don't know, you are the daughter of the original education governor, Jim Hunt, yes. A friend of the show. So you grew up around watching your dad and mom right. Promote public schools and education. So absolutely. What's Rachel Hunt's education sort of worldview? Sort of what do you plan to prioritize as a legislator?
Well, I am very interested in making sure we become the progressive state, the #1 state in public education that we once were under Dad's leadership. And his legacy has been decimated by the things that have happened in the General Assembly since 2010, and I'm out to restore as much of that as I possibly can.
Okay, I mean, and I'm going to get into in a minute. I want to talk to y'all about some specific issues. Representative von Haefen, you were on the show right there in that chair just a little over a year ago, representing, at that point, you were the president of the Wake County PTA Council, and you were talking about the problems that were being created by the K-3 class size mandate. So here we are a year later. You're going to be part of those kind of decisions. I guess first, is there a through line from your concerns and engagement on that issue and you deciding to run?
Absolutely. That was probably the main reason that I ran. I mean, last year in my work, for the last several years, I've been really involved with public school advocacy. I've been working in the General Assembly on the other side, being up there advocating for teachers and students for the last several years. And especially around the class size chaos issue, I got even more involved, and it was the #1 reason why I decided to run. I was so tired of not being heard, felt that there's many other groups, including teachers, that were not being heard, and I decided to run so I could be on the other side of that situation.
And of course, now being elected, now your decisions are going to be like you're going to be the one getting the criticism or the praise. I'm sure that you probably had some conversations with some of your new colleagues on both sides of the aisle that have probably been a little like, it's some of these things are tough. They're going to be easy and not going to be easy. So like one of the issues, teacher pay. We've seen something. So sort of where do you think we've been, and is that something that you want to dive into as a new member?
For sure. I think that was one of the #1 issues that was talked about, by Rachel, by myself, by many other candidates. I know on the campaign trail, it was definitely something that my constituents and voters talked to me about a lot. I think teacher pay, you know, I always bring it back to respect for teachers. I feel that teachers get a bad rap for, you know, wanting a pay raise, or they always want more money. It's really not about that for teachers. I think it's about the respect that pay brings, and that we need to professionalize, you know, teachers again, treat them as the professionals that they are, and that comes with the pay that they deserve.
Right. Representative Hunt, on the campaign trail, you talked to, I'm sure, teachers, educators, parents.
Yep.
Did they talk to you about things like school funding? Did they have concerns? Is that something that you want to tackle?
Sure.
Not just separate from pay, but just in general, the
Right.
support for schools.
Absolutely. Everyone has children or is connected to children. Everyone cares about what happens to their children. I talked about this every day at everyone's doors, and I remember went to mostly unaffiliated and Republican doorsteps. Right. So everyone cares what happens to their children, and schooling is the #1 thing that is important to children. And if we don't have school funding for the buildings, for the teachers, for the supplies, and we don't have any of those now.
Right.
We have to have what children need to get a good education in the state. We owe that to them, and we owe that to our citizens, and that is the only way forward for economic mobility.
Right. Let me, you mentioned going to Republican doorsteps, and one of the education can be, historically has been, a very bipartisan issue. But there are some differences, and one of those are on the areas that under the large umbrella of school choice. Representative Von Haefen, sort of where do you stand, and sort of what are your priorities when it comes to things like charter schools, private school vouchers, virtual charter schools? A lot of those, I mean, they're all different, I know, but
Yeah.
sort of generally, where do you come down on those?
I mean, as a parent, I support parents' rights to have those choices. My kids are in magnet schools, so that's a choice I made for my kids. But I feel that we've gotten away from some of the accountability of some of these programs. They've gotten kind of too big, too fast. I support a reinstatement of the cap on charter schools. And if we're not going to do that, I feel that we need to increase the accountability of schools. I mean, the virtual charter schools have been failing, and they keep being extended. And I think that we need to re-examine how we're accrediting charter schools, and also how we're keeping them accountable for their performance.
Representative Hunt, same to you. Sort of, you've got Charlotte's got a lot of charter schools,
Right.
and I'm going to get into the municipal charter in just a sec. But sort of,
Yes.
your take on these vouchers, those things.
Right. So I also feel that parents need to have choices. My son actually went to a charter school for high school, and I worked in it. So I've been inside, and I was the board chair. So I know how charter schools work, how they can work. Some of them don't work well. Many of them don't have the accountability we need. We were at the Hunt Institute yesterday. We had a lady from the National Accountability Board of Charter Schools, a national group, and she explained how some of our charter schools really are not accountable, and our state is not doing a good enough job in holding them accountable and making sure that we close the ones that are not working.
All right, real quick, I want to ask you about House Bill 514. We've talked about a lot. This was directly affected you. In fact, Bill Brawley, who you defeated,
Right.
was the sponsor.
Yes.
To allow municipal charter
Yes.
schools. That's law now.
Right.
Are you involved in talking to Matthews, Mint Hill, trying to understand more? What do they want? So there's
Yes.
that specific thing, and then there's a policy. So sort
Right.
of, where do you come
Right.
down on this issue?
So I am very involved in talking to folks in Matthews and Mint Hill. That came up some on the campaign trail with parents who were very concerned about what the tax implications would be from 514. This is before it was passed. And I have now met with the mayor of Matthews, and we have talked in depth about how that's going to go forward. Neither Matthews nor Mint Hill have taken further steps to implement that. Cornelius and Huntersville are doing some study groups about going forward with that. So they have just said, the mayor has said that they want to just keep that right now and not use it and not go forward and make it into.
We're almost out of time. Last question for you, Representative Von Haefen. Very positive comments from Speaker Moore about bipartisanship, working across the aisle. You think that's going to happen?
I mean, I think it has to happen. I mean, if we want to pass a budget this year that we all in agreement with and keep the government running, we're going to have to compromise. I'm happy to hear that he's supportive of a school bond because we desperately need that. And so, I think those little steps and his indication that he's willing to work together, I hope, means good things for our state.
We do too. Great. Thanks so much for being here,
Thank
both of
you.
you. When we come back, we're going to be joined by 2 new Republicans elected in November. But before we go to break, see if you can answer this question. Lawyers are the most common profession of members of the North Carolina Senate. What is the second most common?
Matters is brought to you each week in part by Paragon Bank, serving others, enriching lives.